Hi, I'm Wendy and I'm an addict.
Wendy.
Sorry I'm imposing on your Friday meeting, but I was supposed to share last Sunday and I wasn't feeling well, so I'm doing it tonight. Thanks for cheering everyone, and thanks for allowing you to chair Sunjan. I really appreciate it. So on the 4th of July, my Independence Day, Thanksgiving, I celebrated my 11 years, and I still don't know how I got here. I know if it wasn't for all of you guys, my program, my higher power, I know I wouldn't be sitting here. Unfortunately, this morning I wasn't feeling very spiritual, and in fact, as my mother would say, I was full of shit this morning, because I had to go and have a key cut for somebody for our fellow sistership, the gate, and I walked into the key cutter's place, and this woman was sitting there. She was probably about my age, a bit older, large, grey hair. And as I walked in, she said to me, "Gosh, but you're so skinny." And I've had that all my life. And I turned around and I said to her, "Gosh, but you're so fat." And she said, "Well, that's very rude." So I said, "Well, no more rude than what you said to me." She said, "Yeah, but you're supposed to respect your elders." I said to her, "Lady, you're not much older than I am." And she said, "Well, I'll have you know I'm 66. So I told her how old I was. And then we realized just how stupid we were being, and we both burst out laughing, and we walked out the shop together. But that was because for the last 2 days, I haven't really been working my program. I've had this migraine that's been threatening, and usually I'm a nicer person, but this morning I just wasn't in the mood for a crap. So, so I'll start at the beginning. I went into the house on the hill in 2008. I'd only started drinking just before my 50th birthday when my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I never liked alcohol at all, and I certainly never ever took any form of drugs. I was married. The first guy I was married to, my late husband, he was quite abusive, and he used to Friday nights were his night out with the boys. He thought it was his God-given right. It was so bad that I wouldn't even go into a bottle store to buy him beers. I was so against alcohol. My grandfather was an alcoholic, and I saw what he went through, and I didn't want to do that. I never wanted to lose control of myself. And I used to see what it did to my late husband, and it used to get quite ugly sometimes, and so I never ever, picked up a drink until my dad. I used to go up to Joburg to be with my mom and to help her, and she'd have a glass or two of wine and she'd go to bed, and I'd sit up and finish the cask. And after this happened like 2 or 3 times, I thought, well, that's not normal. The next morning I'd shoot out to the shop to replace the cask so she wouldn't know how much I'd been drinking. And then I'd come back. We were still living in Ubonga at the time, and I used to quite like the fact that it made me sleepy and I could forget about things. I often say to Peter that the reason I started drinking was because of his bloody mother, but she wasn't the reason. It was because I couldn't face the reality that I was going to lose my dad because I idolized my father. And about 5 years, 6 years down the line, I'd lost my mom and my youngest brother. And by the time I got into the house on the hill, my last remaining sibling, he was dying of cancer. And he actually passed away when I was up at the house. And I was going to leave to go and be with him. I don't know what I thought I was going to do, but I'd never owed him any amends or anything. And on the one Saturday, just before he passed away, I was out for the day, and I phoned him and I said to him, "Jeff, do you want me to come and be with you?" So he said, "Don't you dare leave rehab." So I didn't. And I was so grateful that I was actually there when he passed away, because I had so much help from my fellow patients, and Brian in particular, who was a counsellor at the time. He was amazing. He made me see that it was a good thing to finally let my brother go, because I just wanted to, get on the plane and go and be with him. So I was really glad that I was there. And then, of course, then there was the funeral. And I've got the sister-in-law. She's the sister-in-law from hell. She's definitely Satan's spawn. And because I didn't leave the treatment center to go up to my brother's funeral, to this day, she's barely spoken to me. But that's okay, because that's her stuff. And I'd made peace with my brother, and my brother said, don't you dare leave until you have to, until you can. So in a sense, it was a blessing in disguise, because I didn't like her, and we don't talk anymore, and I've got no reason to speak to her, because my brother's no longer in the picture. My first year was quite, I found recovery quite easy, because I try and keep my program very simple. Just going back, while I was in treatment for 3 months, I found it really difficult. I hated being there. I found it really hard. It was the first time I'd been away from my home. Being told what to do by most of the people in the house were younger than me. In the beginning, I found it quite hard to take advice from people that were the same age as my kids. In fact, some of them were younger. And until I started opening my mind. My sponsor at the time said to me, just try and be a bit more open-minded. Just because they're younger than you doesn't mean that they're not wise. And once I started listening, things started moving for me. I thought I was only there for 28 days. And we were coming down to a meeting in Scarborough, and I said to Brian, okay, I think I'm probably leaving on Saturday. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, my 28 days up. He said, but your husband put you in here for 3 months. And when I first got there, for the first week, I wanted to divorce Peter. And then I wanted to divorce him again and kill him. But then I realized that I'd never been able to stop drinking or using on my own, and I actually needed something more powerful than myself to stop. Because my youngest son used to find my bottles stashed in various cupboards in the house. He never ever found my stash of sleeping pills. But I was one of those people that when the weekend was coming, I had to make sure that I had enough sleeping pills for the weekend and I had enough booze for the weekend. Because in those days, bottle stores weren't open on a Sunday. And I was too chicken shit to go into a shebeen, because there were a few of those around, but I just couldn't go into one of them. Anyway, moving on. So the first year, I kept it simple. I did service. In my second year, I got a couple of sponsees, and the sponsor I've got today is the same one I had when I left treatment. And I was trying to carry the mess instead of the message. And I used to get really upset with these people that some of them had worked the program, they hadn't finished the program, and because I found it an easy program to live by, I thought that they should find it easy as well. It's simple. It's not a difficult program. It's an easy program for complex people. So the result is, I think within the first 4 years, I must have had about 12 sponsees, and every single one of them relapsed because they weren't working a program the way I saw they should be working a program, the way I worked a program, the way I was told and taught how to work a program. We've had lots of ups and downs through my recovery. Last year was really difficult. I suddenly found myself in a situation where I had to go out and find a job at my age. It's not easy. I found a couple, temporary ones, and now I work in the biltong shop 2 days a week. And last week I started, and I found it so frustrating and so difficult because it's working a till, slicing biltong and weighing it. I mean, how difficult can that be? It's not rocket science. And I think about 4 times the first day, I rang up like millions on the till because I'd done the scale and the weighing wrong. But when I worked yesterday, the first time, I mean, 3 days it took me to learn what I'm doing, and yesterday was the first day I actually felt comfortable in what I'm doing. And in the beginning I was like, last year when I found out I had to start working or look for a job, all the anger and resentment and frustration that came out, and I was really, really angry with my husband because he got us into this situation. And I was really nasty. I was working a program. I was acting the same way I behave without any drugs or alcohol in my system. And my sponsor called me on it, and she said to me, "You're sitting there acting like a victim. Have you ever stopped to think how Peter might be feeling?" And I can honestly say I hadn't given him a thought. He must have felt like crap as well, but because of his bitch of a wife, he hadn't actually said anything. So I had to make a huge amends to him for not being understanding and accepting, and accepting that this is our situation and we must move forward and work on it. I just dumped it on him, blamed him, and made his life a living misery for almost 2 months. Anyway, past that now, thank God. I still get pissed off at him, but I mean, we've been married for over 30 years. What can you expect? You're not perfect. I'm not. Nowhere near perfect. I've got a 40-odd-year-old daughter who's also in this program, and she's finally actually started to take it seriously. She's finally realized that what we've got is a disease, that it's not something that she can get over by herself. She needs people, and she needs a higher power, and she needs a program. And she's very involved in well, not very involved, but she started going about 2 months ago. And it always brings home to me how people in this fellowship are so willing to go the extra mile for the still suffering addict. Because she lives in Mbila, and some of the people, she's got no car, and the people that have been going all the way out to pick her up, take her meeting, take her home, they've been doing this 3 to 4 times a week, because that's just the way this thing is supposed to work. And in the beginning, when I was first in recovery, I also used to give people lifts and all that sort of stuff. So it's almost like a circle. People start helping somebody else. And I'm so grateful that I actually found recovery in Scottsboro, because Scottsboro is an amazing fellowship. I think it's one of the strongest fellowships that I know, because one of my sponsors left and went to Pretoria, and he found it quite difficult in the beginning, but then he just started going to all the meetings around until he found ones that suited him. And he's been up there over nearly 2 years now, and he always says to me, he can't believe how you can walk into a totally different meeting, a strange meeting that you've never been to, you don't know anybody there, and people make you feel welcome. It's something I've always tried to do, is make people feel welcome here, because I remember the first time I went to a meeting, it was a Wednesday night meeting with our sister fellowship, and there was an old elderly guy standing at the door, and the first thing he did was hug me and say, "Hi, my name's Frank, and welcome." And I've been doing that because I remember how good it made me feel when he welcomed me. I mean, I was there with all the people from the treatment center, but I didn't know them yet. I was still getting to feel my way around. As I was saying, when I was in the treatment center, I found it really difficult getting up at a bell, going to have meals at the ring of a bell, going to groups at the ring of a bell, and I think I was home 2 weeks and our doorbell rang. And I said to my husband, "Disconnect that bloody thing." I said, because I'm never ever going to answer that bell again. And he said, "Well, actually," he went down to go and disconnect it, and it stopped working. So I thought, well, that's my higher power doing for me what I can't do for myself, because I hated that bell. However, I must say that concern groups, God, they were fun. But I learned a lot about myself in those concern groups. I learned a lot about myself throughout my steps, but especially my step 1, because I didn't think I was such a bad person. I didn't realize that I'd gone into this victim mode. It was everybody else's fault. It was never my fault. I mean, my poor mother, she was losing her husband, and I wasn't there for her. So, yeah, coming out of treatment, I started making amends. I couldn't make amends to a lot of people on my list because a lot of them had already passed away. So, indirect amends to my parents. I did volunteer work at the hospital shop for 3 years. I used to work there on a Friday morning. And I didn't actually make amends to, there was 2 direct amends I had to make, really, because my 2 adult children were out the house. And because my using was so isolated, I mean, I used to do it in my house, in my bedroom. So the only 2 direct amends I really had to make were to my husband and my youngest son. And on the advice of my sponsor, I didn't say I'm sorry for a whole year, because I was always saying I'm sorry, it won't happen again, and then 2 hours later the same thing would happen again. So after a year, I sat my husband and my son down and I apologized to them for all I put them through and for my behavior and all that sort of stuff. And it was actually anticlimactic, because both my son and my husband turned around and said, "You've got nothing to be sorry for. We understand now what's going on, that it was a disease, and we've seen in the past year that you've changed. Your behavior is totally different. You're the mom and the wife that you used to be." So I was really grateful that they were actually to move forward on that, because I think for about maybe 6 to 9 months, I don't think my husband trusted me. To go out to the shop and come back without any booze stashed in my bag, which is what I used to do. I used to go and I used to buy a bottle, and I used to decant it into water bottles and then hide those around the house, because I didn't want them to find booze bottles. So this program, as far as I'm concerned, if I don't work my program, then I quickly revert to the person I was before I found the 12 steps, and I wasn't a nice person. And I have found over the years, occasionally I will lapse. I've never stopped coming to a meeting. I've always come to my meetings. I've always phoned my sponsor regularly. I do my commitments. I get on my knees morning and night. But sometimes during the day, I'll get that stuffed attitude, and I start getting, my circus starts going insane. Luckily, I've got a sponsor that's actually very understanding. She's like me, and she always manages to pull me back. It hasn't happened often, but I mean, occasionally I haven't been able to get hold of my sponsor. Then I speak to my sponsees, and they're just as hard on me when I'm being full of shit as my sponsor is. I've drawn a blank. Yeah, I'm not going to talk for very long, because a lot of people have heard my share, and I can see some people like cupcakes going. So as far as I'm concerned, this program saved my life. My higher power saved my life. And I implore people to take this seriously, especially your first step, because without the 12 steps, I wouldn't be sitting here. And without the 12-step program and my higher power, I certainly wouldn't have the kind of life I've got today. I haven't got material things that I wanted, but I've got peace, I've got serenity, and I've got the most amazing friends, male, female, older than me. Well, very few people here are older than me, except for Mark. But it's so weird because before I came into the fellowship, I never would have imagined the kind of people that I'm friends with now wanting to be friends with me. But people actually phone me and ask me for advice. And I mean, it got so bad that my son wouldn't even ask me what the weather was like outside because he knew I'd lie to him. I mean, I was just dishonest for the sake of being dishonest. So yeah, I just want to thank everybody here for supporting me, for being here for my recovery, and without you I wouldn't be here. Thanks for letting me share.